5:30, I'm going to call the meeting of the CDA, Community Development Authority, to order. And the first item on the agenda is the roll call, Abby.
Brar,
Here.
Weber,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
Oak,
Here.
Furlong,
I know he's on the telephone. I think he's there somewhere. Karen, we are calling for you. Karen Furlong. He's on something there. I don't know what it is. So
we'll go to Barker
Here.
and Barron.
okay.
Oh, Barron is also here.
Okay, so all right. Well, so we are all here. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
And there was one correction to the minutes. I had listed Kari as absent and she was present at the meeting.
Oh, yes, she was. Yes, she was. So let's correct that one and need a motion to approve the minutes of 11/12/20. The year we all would want to not, well, put behind. So
I'll move approval.
okay, all right. Need a second.
Second.
Okay, second by Dan Barker. Any other corrections or questions or comments other than that one that Kari was there? Okay.
It wasn't Dan Barker that seconded, but I'd be happy to second it.
Oh, okay, so.
I think that was me.
It was Weber.
That was
Okay,
Chris.
Chris Weber. All right. Okay, all right. Thank you, Dan. You're so kind. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed or hold your peace? Okay, so motion is approved. Agenda item, the financial reports, Abby.
Yes. So I just had a couple of things to flag for you in our end of year report. The first one is the income for Hubbard Activity Center. We had budgeted income of $5,500. And of course, that's based on the number of recreation classes that they're able to hold in the recreation center. And because the numbers were down so significantly due to COVID, we only brought in 3620. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I think in the past we've gone over the 5,500 amount. So we were short 1,880 on that one. And then just one second, I think Kieran just emailed me, so I just want to see if he's able to get into the meeting.
I'm in here now, Abby. I just switched to a different computer and seemed to work okay. So I'm here.
All
Thank
right.
you. Sorry for the delay.
No problem. The second thing I wanted to flag is the snow removal item. Let's see, where's snow removal? Oh, here it is. So it's showing that we spent $17,359, but we need to add the December invoice in, which is $4,695. And so we still came in under budget with only 2,945 remaining on that line once the last invoice is coded. And then in the banner and holiday lights line, we went over budget by $3,000. This is the line that we use to pay PKK Lighting to go out and put up the banners and go out and take down the banners. And also as the banners blow down or need to be replaced, they go out and do that work for us. And we are running into a significant issue with the winter decoration banners. Those are the blue and the red ones that have the snowflake. They're really, they're getting really old and worn. And so we had a meeting with Julie Peterman, our tourism director, to talk about possibly replacing those banners. And what we've done in the past is for tourism to cover the upfront costs, and then CDA covers the maintenance over time. But the Tourism Commission's not in a position right now due to the decrease in room tax dollars, that they can likely, pay for the cost of the banners. At least that was Julie's assessment. She hasn't taken it to the commission yet. And so one idea would be that we just take them down for the time being and see if they're missed much by people, or we maybe could take it to the Tourism Commission and see if they're willing to fund it. We might also bring it to the CDA to see if you would be willing. I think Julie was gonna reach out and go ahead and get some cost estimates and maybe see if her marketing firm would come up with a design. So once we have that, we can bring it to the CDA for consideration. Kathy has her hand raised.
When you
Okay.
say if we would fund it, this is a citywide effort, correct?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. You asked that clarifying question a few meetings ago, Kathy, and I had to ask Mike how we handle it, and he said that, yeah, it is citywide. It's not just in the downtown.
I personally, as a CDA member, I would entertain banners for downtown and maintaining those. I don't think as CDA, I would want to take the whole hit for this the whole city, but that's just my comment on that. But I wanted to put it out there before.
This is Kari, and I could kind of get behind that.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure when we get the cost estimates that we break it out for the downtown versus rest of city.
And I wouldn't be opposed if we had something unique to downtown.
Okay.
Downtown, instead of the blue and red banners or whatever that are more generic for the boulevards and stuff. So.
And I would just hope the tourism will pay for it. I mean, it is, they do have a lot of money in their reserve account, close to $2 million. So this is a very small item for them. Anyway, that's good for them to take to the commission and see what they say. So.
Okay. Well, and Kathy's on tourism too, so she'll be
Yeah.
a good source of
I'll track
info.
it.
Yes. Yes.
Other than that, I didn't really have anything on the financial report to flag for you all, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Could you
Yeah,
elaborate on the miscellaneous expense line? I see it's gone up like 3,000 from last month.
Yes, the miscellaneous expenses are all of the like mid-year budgeted items related to COVID that the CDA approved.
Okay.
And the reason that it jumped so substantially is because the invoices for the Buc-ee's sanitation stations, like the hand sanitizer stations, were all going to an employee who hasn't worked for the city in years, but I guess she had ordered Buc-ee's in the past. And so they were all going to Jessica Rip's email account. And so I got all the invoices at one time. Once we told them to come pick it up, they flagged it for me that it hadn't been paid. So they all got coded in one big lump.
Okay.
Wow, that's quite a bit of money there.
Yeah, those
Okay.
hand sanitizer stations I think they were around 200 each per month. And because they were coming out every week to refill them. So they weren't inexpensive, and I would have had them pulled earlier, except I talked with our recreation department and they wanted to keep them up through the walk that they had going on for the holidays around the downtown, the Santa walk. So that's why they stayed up until really early.
We could have taken it down, let them take over the cost for a while. Is that what we?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they would have the funds to be able to pay for it either.
This is Barker. I just wanted to say, I still support that we did that.
Yeah.
I don't regret that.
Right.
There are a lot of people who I saw using them. And, I think we're just kind of in the mindset now with the pandemic that anytime we see one, we just use it, even if we've just washed our hands. So people, they got quite a bit of use.
Is that going to be reimbursed through the CARES funds?
I don't know. Mike, do you have an answer to that? I thought that the CARES funds were potentially going to reimburse some of that.
I thought so too, Abby. I'm not sure if they were on Bill's list that he submitted or not, but if so, there should be money coming back to the CDA.
I will check in and see.
That's excellent, Abby. That's good.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, then I need a motion to approve, or do we need a motion to approve, Abby, then? I guess we do. or-
I don't think you have to approve
Okay,
the financial report.
Okay, all
I
right.
did have one question. I think it was on report 2. Maybe I'm just started looking at it. The down payment assistance, it shows, is that how much is still outstanding is the 42,000, right? Okay, got it.
Yes,
Okay, I was
yep.
looking at it wrong. Never mind. Okay,
We have 4 loans that are still outstanding.
thank you. I was looking at it incorrectly. So.
Okay. Now we give D some time. Report from the downtown horticulturist D Finnegan. D, you're up.
And I stopped share so that Dee can share her presentation from her screen.
Okay,
Before D gets started, can I make a comment?
sure.
This is Mike Davis, and D is our horticulturalist who works on behalf of the CDA with Mark Wegner's supervision during the course of the growing season. But I hired D to be an intern for me through this winter to develop some landscaping guidelines for use initially by the CDA for downtown focus. But the goal is that these guidelines could be used for the city generally in the long term. And what I'm hoping is that we can find a common ground that makes the nativists happy, as well as those who want to see color in the landscaping throughout the year, whether it's native or not. And I think you'll find that Dee's presentation will address that very well. So with no further ado, I'm happy to turn it over to Dee.
Thanks, Mike. All right, Abby, how do I get this? Do I just put?
Okay, so at the bottom of your Zoom meeting screen, there should be a green up arrow that says share screen.
Okay.
Do you see that? There's a mute, stop video, participants, and then the green is share screen.
Okay. Okay.
And if you can't find it, I can pull up your presentation and flip through it on my screen too.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Is it up? All right.
Yep. Great job, D.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. You can hear me okay?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Mike, that was a good introduction. Let me see here.
Thank you. I thought I would buy time while you're putting that presentation
I
up.
appreciate that.
I could have
You know
bought
what?
more time.
The the panel of people is over so I can't see what I have on my screen.
So you should be able
Oh.
to, if you just pick that panel up, you should be able to move it off to the side.
Okay.
There's also in
Got
the
it.
top. Okay, you got it? Okay.
Yeah, got it. All right. So it's about what we need to know to put the guidelines together. And as Mike mentioned, it really has been about working with natives versus folks who don't necessarily like the native gardens. So, okay, hang on a second. I'm going to try and get this out of here. Yeah, I can't see my, okay.
So Abby, would it be better if you were to do the slides?
Well, I gave her an unfinished version, so I'm just gonna try and get this off of.
An easier way might be in the top right where it has like the cube and it says view.
Yeah.
If you click on that and then do side by side
Oh, okay.
gallery,
Gotcha.
see if that works for you.
Okay. Well, actually, now I've got it going here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the downtown plan inventory, what we have now, and why we might need guidelines to help us with that. I'm going to introduce, this is something we've talked about before, eco services, and how they can help us kind of provide a framework for the guidelines in essence. I'm going to talk about basic landscape design and why are plants good for people, the benefits, why are plants good for wildlife and ultimately people, and what concepts can we apply to develop these guidelines. There's a lot, unfortunately, I won't be able to cover just because of time. And but these are ideas that will be in the guidelines to some extent. That's stormwater management, water and air quality, habitat fragmentation, greening the position of the downtown horticulturalist, climate change and how that affects how we make decisions about plants, education about benefits of native planting. This is a really important part that I definitely will need help with from the group. Biodiversity, which is a big topic, but I won't be able to get to it today. So what we have downtown right now is a real kind of mishmash of native gardens and what I call old school landscaping. So for instance, we have a lot of this Rus aromatica that was pretty popular, some time ago, and it's growing everywhere, a lot of places. We have a lot of areas that were planted by developers, but now actually the plants are disappearing. They're getting mold and wiped out. And that's an issue. We're going to have to address that as well. Without consistent guidelines, there's no basic design coherence, no adequate planning for biodiversity, and no consistent aesthetic, which is very important, and that's bad. But with consistent landscaping guidelines, we'll have the opportunity to provide cohesion of what the downtown planting areas look like. We'll be able to link site buildings and hardscape to the landscape. We can link the downtown with surrounding areas at some point, and come up with concrete reasons for why we are making these decisions. Those reasons we can help talk about what's the differing, what people like to look at, what people don't like to look at. And the guidelines is going to emphasize functions. And what I mean by that is that this is an opportunity to make decisions of what we want to plant based on the function we want to, get out of it, basically. All right, so I'm going to talk about the ecosystem services and how we can apply those services. We've talked about this before, but I think I'm going to go in a little bit deep here. The definition is the functions and products of ecosystems that benefit humans or yield welfare to society. So the products that we get or the certain services that we get. And here is the big picture. There are four categories in the ecosystem services structure. Provisional, and that's what we directly get from the ecosystems, our food, our fiber, clean water, medicinals, and regulating is benefits from regulation of the ecosystem processes. So some examples about that is the pollination, which is very, very important, climate regulation, flood control or stormwater control, and the sociocultural one. And this is a very interesting one as far as what people, you can't really describe it necessarily. It's the things we get from plants or from landscapes. And then there's support services, which is kind of an overarching, thing that has affected all of the categories. And that's a lot to take in. So what I want to do is focus on these two categories. These are two categories, regulating, which gets at more at the biological effects, and sociocultural, which gets at people's vision or aesthetics about the landscape around them. So first, we're going to talk about the social cultural issues part of eco-services. I'm going to start with really basic design elements, and there's a reason for this. If you don't have basic design, you don't have kind of a backbone that presents landscapes in a really beautiful way or a functional way. And a lot of people think about design elements in a lot of different ways, but these are really basic ideas behind it. So color, and this is an important point, category, especially for people. Form, and form is just basically the shape that different plants take. Texture is more at the kind of micro scale, just a variety of different kinds of plants and how they work with each other. Line is a very basic idea of creating lines to draw you in or to draw your attention somewhere. And scale, which I find very important, and I think we're going to be able to talk about scale a little bit later. And the things that people find attractive in landscapes can be overlapped with some of the biological elements to landscapes. So for instance, people really like variety. They like to see a lot of different kinds of plants, a lot of different forms, texture, etc. Obviously, color is a big issue for a lot of people. They want to see, something that is really attractive, aesthetic, that sort of thing. Clumping and massing of color. Now, this idea is that putting together, like one kind of flower and create a mass of it, and maybe, a mass of this, a mass of something else nearby. But excuse me, the interesting thing about this is that pollinators like clumping and massing as well. They like to be able to just kind of go to an area, browse, and, spend some time in one area and then move on to the next. Long continuous flower blooming times. A lot of people talk about different gardens that don't have something blooming in a certain period of time, and that contributes to the lack of attractiveness. Obviously, this is also a good thing for pollinators who like to be able to stretch the blooming times and have more access to resources. Let's see. So this is a very interesting element about how do landscapes and plants affect people. And one of the things that it has been researched is that it actually improves relationships and compassion. People who work around flowers or gather around flowers have a better attitude and can share that with other people. There's some support for that in workplaces. If you have plants around you, you have improved human performance, for instance. Learning, there's some evidence to support that kids who are able to get outside or spend time with plants inside actually are able to take in information better. And there's a lot of information about mental health and how it affects people in a positive way. You know, and there's the physical benefits as well, health and recreation, going out and getting a brisk walk in nature. There's evidence that it accelerates the healing process so that, you know, if you're in a hospital and you have a view to the outside to a garden area, or if you have plants in your hospital room, that it helps with the, accelerates the healing process. And then there's obviously all the medicinal properties that plants have that help us as well. This is a really interesting area of how it affects the community. So people who are around really nicely landscaped areas feel like they have a higher quality of life. And this is important in attracting businesses and sustaining growth in the community. There's some evidence that plants and landscapes reduce community crime. It's really interesting. It's basically about how people take care of their parks and landscaped areas, and you know, have a sense of ownership in essence. Traffic safety, that's pretty much about apparently plants in a median help you know, kind of guide you and relax drivers, which is always a good thing. And the upgrade effect, which is interesting, that one area starts working on the landscaping of the area, and it kind of snowballs and goes to other areas, and and other people are affected by that landscape and want to do that themselves. And color, we're going to go back to color and how it affects the community. Latrice Eisman from Pantone says, our response to color is intensely emotional, and flowers can be a catalyst for feelings that stimulate more than just our senses of sight and smell. And as a helpful hint, the color orange can help simulate sales, sorry. All right, so we addressed some of the sociocultural parts of plants and landscapes, and now we're going to the second category, which is the biological part of it. First, we want to talk a little bit about what native plants are, and a lot of people have a lot of different definitions, but for today, a plant is considered native if it's occurred naturally in a particular area prior to human introduction. And so a lot of times the United States uses actually pre-European settlement, post-European settlement. There's such great things about native plants. So they don't require the fertilizers and pesticides that others do because of they're accustomed to being in that area. They don't require as much water. They help reduce runoff, which is very important to control flooding. And native plants also help us reduce air pollution, and mostly from lack of mowing and burning fossil fuels. They're adapted to the local climate and soil conditions. So what that means is that we go back to the less pesticides and that sort of thing. They also provide shelter and food for wildlife. They sequester or remove carbon from the air and promote biodiversity and stewardship of our natural heritage. And a thing I'm going to talk about in a little bit, they provide nectar, pollen, and seeds that serve as food for butterflies, insects, birds, and other animals. So why are pollinators so important? 87% of our major food crops depend on animal pollination. Also, many ornamental plants are crops for fiber, biofuels, the wood we grow, and pharmaceuticals. However, pollinators are in a decline due to invasive pests and diseases, exposure to chemicals, loss of their habitat, and change in land use. A lot of times we have more development in agriculture, and that displaces them. The lost species and genetic diversity, and climate change. However, not everybody enjoys the native gardens. So there's a lot of good reasons to plant native plants. But I just did a lot of reading, just trying to understand how people who don't necessarily like the look of native gardens, the reasons behind it. And some of it is just people like what they know, and people don't like that they look a little messy, or that they want more order or more formalized garden. And some people find traditional plantings more attractive. So, and they're not aware of the ecological benefits of native plants. And this goes back to people preferring what they know. Not being aware of ecological benefits is something that can be addressed through education and kind of word of mouth and trainings, that sort of thing. Some people just don't like change. So, but there are answers to what we can do to address that. And cues to care, I'll be talking about that a little bit. It's the whole concept of when you are managing a landscape, and if it looks more neat around the edges, more groomed in some way, it gives the effect that there's somebody who cares about it and who's, keeping track of it, staying on top of it, and having it look more, I guess, traditional in a way, traditional garden. There's also planting native plants. If your goal is to plant a prairie, for instance, it's going to be, your process is going to be a lot different from, like, if you want to present, a native garden or something where you want it to, for instance, in front of City Hall, excuse me, you plant it differently, you grow different plants, and you can work with the whole look of it in a different way. And then, of course, public education will help people understand what it is that we're trying to do with native gardens. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but suffice it to say that native plants are ones, as we talked about earlier, that came to prior to human settlement. Hybrids and cultivars are quite similar, and we understand that those most when we talk about hybrid roses, for instance. They're manipulated by humans to create a certain product that is important, is improved in essence by combining two other hybrids. Cultivar, we know that concept most from fruit and apples and that sort of thing. So again, it's a cultivated version of a plant bred by horticulturalists. And then we have the final one, which is a nativar, and you can see that it's part native and part cultivar. And the image, if you compare it to the one on the top, the Echinacea purpurea, which is the original native plant. What we have with Echinacea purpurea sundown is obviously a different plant altogether. It's different colors, and Echinacea is actually one thing. Coneflower is actually one plant that has a lot of really neat varieties, and they provide different kinds of things for different people. Here's another example. And if we choose to use native plants, why would we not include nativars in our landscaping design? It would give us more variety. in extended bloom times, like which I mentioned both people and pollinators like. There's a lot more options and generally more aesthetic appeal, and also the added bonus of scent sometimes, fragrance, other sorts of sensory changes. So combining, this is basically what we know about native plants and nativars for maintenance. It's important because it uses less, they use less water, require less maintenance, generally don't have invasive tendencies. Little pruning is required, which is a lot. I spend a lot of my time doing pruning on plants that aren't necessarily where they should be because they're outgrowing it or something. Having disease resistance is also a very important part of spending less time addressing plant needs. But on the other hand, some of the research done with nativars have actually more disease resistance. So what does it mean for wildlife? Well, native plants provide habitat for wildlife and great support for pollinators. This is the big question, though. Do nativars provide the same ecological functions and benefits as your straight native species? Bottom line is, the people who do the research say, well, it depends. It depends on the individual plant itself. So of the research that there is out there, the results of the research give us some direction as far as when we want to choose nativars and still have the same kind of ecological support. But we have to make some choices. And one of the things is like being aware of leaf color. And when a nativar is changed in the way that the leaves change color, to some kind of exotic red, blue, or purple, for instance, that has an effect on pollinators. They don't, that it doesn't appeal to them as much. Variegated leaves, now this is a mixed bag. So there's some research that says, yeah, it actually helps pollinators, and some other research that says that it really doesn't. So if we focus on flower colors that attract pollinators, we know what bees are attracted to and what hummingbirds are attracted to and butterflies. So these are good tips for us to, if our goal is, if the function is to attract pollinators, we can make some choices about plants. Okay, so these are continuing more the kinds of things that we don't want with nativars. We don't want sterile flowers, which includes double and triple flowers. And we don't want plants with double or triple flowers because this actually makes it less accessible to pollinators. So if we avoid those kind of flowers, we know that we're moving in the right direction. All right, time to apply our knowledge. I want to look at the native garden in front of City Hall as our case study. First thing I want to say is it's not not about the native plants. The native plants are very good, and I've mentioned many ways that why they're so good. If we look back to what we learned about design guidelines, for instance, scale, I think, is a very important issue as to why some people might be put off by the native garden. So the plants are really quite large, maybe some different choices in plants that are a little shorter. But what it does is sort of overwhelm the front of the City Hall. Again, we go back to what was the intent of the design? Are we trying to have a wild prairie, Or can we acknowledge that this is an actual landscape that's important that we want to frame and present the City Hall area? Back to public education, this may be an opportunity for us to share what it is we're trying to accomplish with native gardens, and also the cues to care. Some people do find it messy. So let's talk about what we want to include in our guidelines and where do we start. First, this is kind of a no-brainer. We do not want to have invasive plants. So that's a start. They all compete with native plants, and it's they can take over. Okay, so we have some things now to focus on. We have ecological sustainability. We have aesthetics, and all people's, there's a lot of different views on what's attractive and what's not attractive, and functionality. And I'd like to bring this into the discussion, because choosing a function first helps us to direct how we want to, plan our landscapes. Two other things, obviously we need to care about the soil and the moisture and what plants need to be in certain areas, and what maintenance is involved in maintaining the landscapes. So if we focus on which functions we need to, that we want to use to the landscape to provide, which plants best meet the needs of those functions, obviously the growing requirements, and another concept, which is what is our overlapping goals and values. So I'm bringing in a couple of concepts here. That is what I want to emphasize, that if we focus on function and how we want to use the space, that can guide us to which plants we use, or how we lay out the design and that sort of thing. So here's some examples. If our function is to attract pollinators, and the overlapping goals and values are ecological preservation. For instance, we might want to use 80% to 100% native plants. And then other plants 0 to 20%. Again, providing wildlife habitat, it's the same kind of percentage. Now, gathering space for people, or say the value is to provide a calming, reflective space. We don't need to focus so much on natives as we do on other things, such as fragrance and color, and what plants look like together, how they're planted together. So we can use a higher percentage of the other plants. This is the nativars, or the bulbs, or the well-behaved cultivars. Yeah. So what I have here is a map and an example of how we apply function to different areas downtown. It might be a little hard to see, but there's, say we want to have an area that focuses on stormwater. Behind the library is a really good area for that. And, if we want another place for gathering, next to City Hall is a great example of where a lot of people go to hang out. And so our focus would be different. It's a different function, and we would apply different plants and different values to that. Screening is a great use of landscape plants. And so, screening something like the parking lots is a really good example of how to use plants in the function of screening. And then wildlife. I have a couple of areas that are probably hard to see, but near the senior center, this is a good example of where we want, it is a place to gather, but we might also want to use, you know, have a bird habitat area. And so that would be basically a couple of different uses. Again, right by the senior center, screening could be used to screen the parking lot. And the areas that are raised beds, I think would make a really nice place to draw birds so that folks who are sitting outside can watch the birds and you know, and feed the birds. The other tool that I have that I've been creating, and this is kind of a mishmash, but it's my database. And I've put together a bunch of over 300 plants, and the categories I'm using are flower color, when they bloom, you know, what kinds of sun exposure they need, soil moisture, how salt tolerant they are, how drought tolerant, and a couple of other areas. Now, it is a category is function. And there's a lot of different, you know, start to see some of the areas of, you know, stormwater, pollinators, a lot of different functions that we want to use. And we can use this database to choose, we choose a function, and that will sort out the sorts of plants that we might be interested in using for that. So there's a couple of tools here in place. And I think this with the maps, and the guidelines will be tools that can help us figure out what we want to do with the landscaping in downtown. I personally have a few next steps that I want to do, or meet with Mark Wagner and a few others to discuss natives and to what extent you know, the natives are of the ecoregion or of the county or that sort of thing. I'll be writing the guidelines and complete my plant database. I'll want to include some spring bulbs, some shrubs. There's a bunch of nativars called American Beauties that are it's an interesting group. And so I'll never complete the plant database because that's something we can always add to or take away from depending on the situation. I want to research sources for native and native plants, finish map for the entire downtown, similar to the one that with the coding. And then see how well this all works together. Use the tools, the database, the map, and the functions, and put this all together and see how well it works for making choices for our downtown landscapes. I have a resource paper. Actually, I'll give it to Abby if you can distribute it to people. It goes into a little bit more depth, you know, on some of the research that I've been exploring.
Well, and Dee, you have put a lot of work into it. Well, anyway, maybe, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, if anyone has any questions, that's.
Yeah, to begin with, I want to say thank you for doing this super job. You have clearly have put a lot of work into it, and your knowledge base shows, and I can see that you have thought through that color, form, all of those various landscaping ideas, 5 of those, and so I'm putting those all together, and again the native plants and nativers, and then you go to the final slide there, where whether it's a gathering place or the other one, how do you mix the nativers and the other plants? So you have really done your homework. Looks really good. I'm very pleased, and so I'm also pleased that it looks like you are including the parking lots, and also because that's where people see a lot of the times when they come there. and also the area where you showed the example close to the west of the city hall. And yeah, I'm very pleased. So let's, the question would be that how soon can we start? I'm sure you're already putting this stuff together, and then
Yeah.
look at your actually map for different areas, and let everybody provide their input, and then you know, who and what we need to put this into practice. And I'm glad that you put that the maintenance, because in the long run, you know, the maintenance is a big issue. Otherwise, you can see that parking lot on Terrace Avenue. It looked good when it was done, but not anymore. So the maintenance is a big issue, and keeping that in mind is very important. And low maintenance, and if they can, you know, stay that way for a long time, that's excellent. And I can also see the kids love the butterflies, the pollinators, and you know, who doesn't like fragrance? And yeah, so you have thought various concepts, and I open up for questions now, but in the long run, it would be to see how soon can we get it going. Yeah, so questions, please. Maybe you raise your hands and let me see how I can, or Abby can tell me about the. who is
Dan
raising.
Barker has his hand raised.
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering if there might be a page on the city's website for all the data and information you've collected.
Oh, that's a great idea. Would you be willing for us to put that on the website, Dee?
Yeah, absolutely. I also have I mean, I could provide a shorter version if necessary, but I'm happy to, I'll give you the latest version that I have.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Like one of the things I had when we had the ash thing come through, I was like, well, what does the city recommend to plant for trees? So that type of thing's real nice.
Mhm.
Dee, this is Chris Weber. Just a quick comment here. Great presentation, a lot of information. You're very passionate about your work. I think all but except the last picture was all summertime. There was nothing. I mean, every picture you had was from the summer. So
Yeah.
it just begs the question: it's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer this, but are you going to include some winter landscaping considerations in everything that you're doing?
Absolutely.
Okay, from your head nod, I say yes.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain it now, just in the interest of time. I just suggest that you do incorporate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of one of the things that we can do to help, you know, for wildlife habitat and that sort of thing, is like considering the winter landscape.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Kari and then Katie.
Okay, Kari and then Katie.
Oops, I didn't even know I had raised my hand. All I was going to say, Dee, is I've already emailed Abby and Mike Davis to see if you would, if you could work with the library to give a presentation to the public about this. I think there are so many gardeners.
Yeah.
And I just think that general awareness raising about some of this and understanding the rationale and the underpinnings might really help with community acceptance. And I think people would love it.
I think that's great. I would love to.
Yeah.
Great idea, Kari. Katie.
Kari, that is an amazing idea, because Dee, that was such a great presentation. You convinced me about natives. I'm the lollipop tree girl, you know, like trimmed to the end. And you know, the differences in the nativars and having different areas for different functions is just a fabulous idea. And I love that idea of having people come to see you at the library, because if we can change a lot of minds around the city, we'll just be a lot more full of natives and nativars, and it's just good for everything.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, and to Chris's comment, I also really, my gardens, I choose funky trees and stuff so that in the winter the bones look really good.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's part of your plan, but I really liked your efficient way of presenting. It was just excellent. Thank you.
Oh,
Good.
thank you.
Yes. Because I am in before Kathy. Well, quick one. So first of all, yes, I think that's a great suggestion to do a presentation at the library. in terms of this education of bringing people on board with natives, because to Katie's point, yes, I want to do that out in my terrace in front, and I'm, struggling with my wife who says it'll be a bunch of weeds. I'm like, that's exactly the point.
So you hear it too, huh?
Exactly. I hear it too. But in terms of then going further, I'm just wondering if you have given any thought to community involvement. Like, is there, and I know it sounds great. Oh, let's get a bunch of people to help you, and it becomes more work to get them to help than do anything else. But I think there's no substitute in terms of educating people and getting them stuck in, and whether it's working with the local elementary schools or something else. But if there's some way we can do community gardens or have people get stuck in, they also appreciate the work that goes into it much more as well. So,
I think that's a good idea. And I think we can certainly pick specific projects that are, that might be easier to work with kids, or kids could enjoy a little bit more, or anybody really. That sounds great.
Right.
So next one is Kathy and Karen. I can tell you that you can put Karen D at the top of the list. So he likes doing things. So
Great.
First Kathy and then Mike. Kathy,
You're
you got to
muted,
unmute
Kathy.
yourself.
Is that area next to City Hall, that's not accessible to the public, is it? Where you're saying gathering space, where you have it highlighted in pink?
Right. Well, yeah, I talked with Mike about that, and I think my perspective is that it certainly could be, and it could be integrated into a larger design, a downtown design. And that's one of the few areas that people can get together where, they're surrounded by plants. And right now it's not there aren't necessarily great choices of plants, but especially with the vacant space next to it, and just kind of integrated into a more public space. So
yeah, if we could figure a way to make that accessible, I think that would be a nice little spot.
Yeah, I do too.
Now, the area in front of City Hall, are you saying that's a good example, or it's a good example of, like, if you're trying to attract wildlife or pollinators? But
well, I guess my perspective
Abby,
is,
you can read what I between the lines.
my perspective is that I do hear some complaints about it from the public and from community members. And so my point is that the complaints, people do talk about the native plants, but it really is not the fault of the native plants. And I think once we kind of integrate these other design elements and scale elements, and get really purposeful about how we want something to function, I think it was a great symbol of of what Middleton is like, and what Middleton community members value. And I think, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if we put together guidelines based on, not compromising sustainability, and not compromising aesthetics of what people like to look at and find beautiful. I mean, I think there are ways that we can really bring those two concepts together, and in a way that is really acceptable by a lot of different people.
Yeah, you had one slide that showed the native and Navatar, and it was more landscape looking, and I thought it was beautiful. And I think it would be easier to get people on board. Put me in the column of liking things in order, but that's the way I am. But there was a slide, it was beautiful, but I think it'd be easier, if we had some examples of that to show people this is where we're going. There was a time when every landscape plant, echinacea, it's done to death. And so I really liked that slide and that example. I'm done.
Yeah, that's a great input, Kathy. And I think Dee had those 5 different concepts: the color, the lines, texture. And I'm sure that, she's going to, when she thinks about this City Hall, which is very important, that she's going to look into those things. And here's Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Dee. Nice job. I knew you would do a great job.
It's good to see you.
And I wanted to mention that with what Dee's doing, I do have an ultimate goal here that I want to be very frank about with the CDA. Our maintenance budgets are hard to keep up, and especially to expand for a growing city with the restraints that we have on general property taxes and our overall revenue for the general fund. So what I envision with what Dee's presented here is a means by which we can include this kind of landscaping in our capital projects. Capital does not have the constraints that operating budget does, so that as we have new capital projects, for example, the community campus downtown or the Stonehorse Green or others that are funded initially by capital, that you get this kind of lower maintenance, high impact, visual, native stormwater benefit at the same time. And you get that upfront cost paid through capital. And if you do it right, like Dee has described, then you have low maintenance costs. And that kind of low maintenance cost is extremely important for us. The other potential I see, and the mayor has talked about a lot too, is getting people and companies to sponsor various areas in front of their businesses. And as Dee has presented, there's a lot of reasons for businesses to want to have that kind of beauty, fragrance, et cetera, in front of their business as a means by which to attract people in the front door. So I think the CDA is positioned to be the pioneer on this for the community, to perhaps put together a pilot project that Dee could put in place for this season, growing season of 2021. I don't know how much that's going to cost. We're going to be subject to Dee coming up with an estimate for us. But we know that with the community campus plan, that ideally the city would have that underway in about 5 years. So we have about 5 years to work with. And ideally, on the more established side of west side of the downtown might be a good place to start. Or in front of City Hall, recognizing that it would only last for perhaps 5 years before we'd have a new project underway for this part of the downtown. So those are my thoughts about how we could proceed. But to get an upfront allocation from the CDA for a pilot project this year, I think would be a great way to start.
So Katie, you also had your hand up. Do you have something, or you took it down? So
Well,
anybody...
I just, it was a naive idea, but I just thought if Dee needed maybe a way of contacting people and then saying, I'm looking for this particular plant. If you have extras, we could use them in the downtown landscape. I don't know. I think that the plantings are going to be on a scale that's not feasible, but it was just a thought.
Good thought. Well, also we could have a friends of downtown, Ken and Kari and Kathy. They would be all happy, and I will come and help with planting and some of those things. So I think coming together, we can make a difference. Of course, Mike had a great idea there. So any further questions before we move on to the, and Dee is going to create a garden, which is from snow melting going up to the fall. And she knows all those plants, and I know it too. In my own garden, that's how it happens. There are flowers right when the snow is melting, and they go up to the fall. So they would be able to do even better. So any last minute question?
Ari
Okay.
has her hand
Just
raised.
super quick, I love the idea that Mike put forward of using City Hall as sort of like, I think it would be a great like demonstration project, because I think it's something that people have strong opinions about. And I think a transformation there would be kind of awesome, and it would probably be worth it even if it were only a 5-year deal, because I'm sure that some of the plants could be relocated at the end of it.
And the other is, if you could start with that part of it on the parking lot on the Terrace Avenue, which will stay there forever. And now it's looking so simply awful. Anyway, so great area. You have so many places where you could start, or even, yeah, parking lots are so bare. Any last minute questions for Dee? And she has done a phenomenal job, put a lot of work into it, great slides, and she's ready to putting some more final touches to it. So, Karen.
That was just an applause emoji. No.
Emoji. I
Well,
got
thank you for your
I got to
Oh,
learn
so
those things.
patience.
So
Okay.
fancy.
I got to. Okay. All right. Emojis, folks. So, all right. We've got to. Abby, do you want to do anything more on this one, or move on to the next item?
I think we can move on and just expect that
Okay.
at some point we'll bring a cost estimate forward for the
Yeah.
pilot project.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you, Dee.
Thank you, Dee. All right. If you have any questions, if you want to brainstorm, I'm always available. So thank you. Update and discussion on the Stonehorse Green. Abby.
Thank you. Just a really quick update on where we are, some of the recent progress we've made with the Stonehorse Green. We had to put our fundraising initiative on hold due to COVID. We had a professional fundraiser that was paid for by the Tourism Commission and hired by the Middleton Area Development Corporation. And when the pandemic hit, we only had 2 months left on the fundraisers contract, and we decided that it would be a better use of those remaining 2 months to wait a bit. And so we put that on hold. And just as of this week, we've restarted that contract to go for the next couple of months. And I'm meeting with our fundraiser tomorrow, along with Kevin Mahaney, who's on our capital campaign committee and has been really involved, probably our lead person going out and meeting with prospective donors at this point. So we have Amanda under contract for the next couple months, and we're going to be getting the capital campaign committee back together and start meeting again regularly for the next, well, I guess until we complete the project. We have unveiled an opportunity to sponsor a tile at the Stonehorse Green, and this the donor wall, it's going to be really cool. It has a lot of historic images of Middleton. There are $1,000 sponsorship opportunities, and there are $5,000 sponsorship opportunities. And we're allowing individuals who sponsor a tile to be able to select their own image. And so that I think has been a real selling point. We have only had the opportunity at this point to advertise this on the city's Facebook page, and we've already had, I think, 7 tiles that have been sponsored. So it's going pretty well. And we've been putting out information on our city Facebook page when we get a tile that comes in with a sponsorship. Thank you, Kathy, to your family for sponsoring, and also Mike Davis as well. So the city council budgeted a total of $1 million for the capital costs of the project, which means that the capital campaign committee needs to raise about $600,000. And that's based on an actual bid price that we got. And you know, it could go up or down depending on how the bids come in whenever we're actually ready to construct the project. We have made really good progress, but we're a long way to go. And you know, admittedly, it's unlikely that this is going to get built this year, and that's okay. It may have to be delayed until next year. But we didn't, you know, of course, with the pandemic, it's been very challenging to go out and meet with people to do fundraising. But we have raised now over $45,000 to date. And like I said, that's like just putting information out on the city's Facebook page, basically, at this point. So we're pretty happy with our progress so far. So that's all I had on that item. And I think the last item that we had on, oh, Kathy. Kathy has her hand raised.
Abby, there's some, I want to make sure that it's clear about this fundraising, that some people are saying, oh, let's scale back the design and put in the bathrooms and the stage. That, can you make sure that, can we talk about what TIF covers and what TIF cannot cover and why we need to fundraise?
Yes, yep. So our city attorney has determined that anything that resembles a recreation facility is exempted from the TIF statute. So it's not, if it looks like a recreation shelter or facility, it is not, you cannot use TIF funding to construct it. Now, we have probably 25 examples of other communities who have used TIF funding to build these types of facilities, but our attorneys, of course, like to err on the side of caution, and they're quite conservative, and they know the statutes really well. And so what they have determined is that the restrooms and the storage facility within the building cannot be constructed using TIF funding. We have talked about the possibility of trying to construct the site without the building. We've looked at opportunities to scale back. They would be expensive because the design itself was around $200,000, and it's all engineered and it's stamped by an architect. So if we were to decide to go with a different design, there would be certainly some costs involved with getting a redesigned space. This project had more public involvement than any other city project. And so I think there would be a lot of disappointment in the community if we were to start from scratch. And we'd still run into the issue where the building itself is not likely to be eligible for TIF funding. When I reached out to Ken Psyche and asked him about the possibility of constructing the improvements without the building itself, he's like, well, we can't do that because the building houses kind of the brains of the site. So that's where the electrical panel is, that's where the sound is coming in, the screen. That's where we're going to be able to store tables and chairs. So if we were to try to do that as like a stopgap measure, we would have a concrete slab with a whole bunch of mechanicals on it. And so we would also be having some duplicated costs because we would have to mobilize construction twice and tear things out and rebuild. So that doesn't sound like a good solution. But I know the mayor is interested in reaching out to Ken and meeting with him separately to see if he has any ideas for ways to scale back.
Can TIF funds be used if we need to talk about a little different design? Could TIF funds be used for that part of it? I think they could, couldn't they?
Yes, we use TIF District 3 funding to pay for the design.
Okay. All right. I just wanted that to be clear. And we did have somebody, from the downtown businesses on the design committee. And I mean, I just want to make sure that we've covered our bases, I think, pretty well. And I mean, the design is what the design is. Just another side point, with the lighting at the Stonehurst Green, I did talk to Ron Boyer today, and he was wondering, since this is Stonehurst Green in discussion, if there'd be any way, and he didn't, he was very casual about it and stuff, but would there be any way for the city to plow the snow in front of his place as kind of an exchange for the lighting, since they're out there anyway, because he's closed now? Is there
You mean like the sidewalks?
Yeah, just the
That-
sidewalk.
I think that should be not a problem. We talked to the staff.
If
so.
it's not the right time to talk about it, I can call somebody in to
Well,
talk about it.
During non-city hall hours, that's actually done through our maintenance contract that the CDA pays for.
Okay.
So,
I don't know how many snowfalls we're gonna have, but he was just wondering if there's any possibility that we could do something like that for him.
yeah, I mean, I showed you our budget for snow removal this year or last year, and we
Right.
had $2,945 left over.
Mhm.
During city hours, so 7:45 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, that's handled by our facilities person. But if the snow comes down or the ice and it needs to be either salted or shoveled during non-city hours, that's done by B&E Construction and paid for by the CDA around
Okay.
the Stone Horse Green.
Okay.
So how
Um,
about you and Kathy talk about it, and I'm in fully support of helping them. I guess they're helping us. It just makes sense, and I'm sure
And
the
it's
other.
why, you know, it's just why they're closed, and I don't know how many snowfalls
No,
we'll have,
no,
but it's,
I
he
think
just
sounds
floated
like
the
a
idea, so I,
Sounds like a good idea, Kathy.
okay.
Okay, so the next item, Abby, so downtown street project, we got few minutes before the
This
next
is for-
meeting begins.
This is for Mike. Mike wanted to give a quick update on this.
Mike, he may have gone to the other meeting.
Oh, yeah, I think he had to go open the Middleton equity team. So I'll just quickly tell you that we were planning on reconstructing a few downtown streets this year. And we have the design almost done, but after we reached out to the business community, they made it pretty clear that the majority of their members would prefer to hold off on reconstruction because they need their outdoor space. They need to be able to open their doors come spring, and having the roads under construction was going to be really difficult for them. There were some businesses that were very supportive of going ahead and getting it done now, but the majority asked for it to be delayed. And so a decision has been made to delay that project. And I think it's until 2023 now. Am I correct about that, Kathy?
It could be 22 or 23. but
Okay.
They
I
said
go
likely
check.
they would prefer the 2023, but that's nothing set in stone. They're gonna revisit it.
Okay.
Anyway, we want to make sure our businesses survive, and whatever they want, I think is okay. So the road isn't such a bad, road is okay. So I think if we delay 2 years, not a problem. So anybody else has anything else which you want to share before we adjourn? Well, thank you to everyone, and we need a motion to adjourn, but stay safe, stay well, and things are going to get better soon. So
I'll make a
So
motion.
I'm sorry,
Hang
Mrs.
on.
Barker, Mayor, forgive me. Where did we, and this isn't gonna drag out, I promise I'll make it quick. Where did we land on Stone Horse Green? Are we saying everything's on hold now, or?
No, we're continuing to fundraise, but we can't build it until we complete our fundraising goal. So we have to raise $600,000, and we've only raised $45,000 so far. So while it's highly unlikely that it's going to get constructed this year, unless we just hear from like 3 major donors tomorrow and things really get moving quickly. It's we're thinking that next year is going to be more realistic to be able to complete our fundraising goal.
That's fair. I guess the points I wanted to make were, I think there's going to be a heck of a lot of pent up demand. I also think this area is huge for our team. This is where we can make the community happen. So yes, if we can please circle back on this at a later date. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
I
I
can put it
motion
on
to,
the next
go
agenda.
ahead.
just talk to people, Dan, that whoever, if you run into someone with money, tell them great
Well,
opportunity.
agreed, but Middleton's not running short on money. I'll be the first to say that. Let's go walk up and down the lakefront over there. But anyway, with all that being said, I motion to adjourn.
Okay, need a second.
I'll second that. This is Kieran.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn and have dinners, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So we are
Abby, can I
adjourned.
give you a call tomorrow?
Sure, absolutely. You have
Are
my
you gonna
cell
be in
phone.
the office? Are you on your cell phone? Okay.
Yeah, I'll be
Yeah.
on my.
Do you have a lot of meetings or any time, or what works best?
I only have 2 meetings. I think one is at. Let me check here. Let's see.
Bye, guys. See you next time.
See you,
Bye,
Dan.
Dan.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I have a 10:30 to 11:30, Kathy, and then a 2 to 3.
I'll try 1 o'clock. Okay.
1 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it on my calendar.
Okay. We have
Thank you.
15 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.